Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Supply Chain Certified. Today, we're going to talk about an interesting topic called Navigating PFAS Regulations in 2025, a complete survival guide for manufacturers. It's just me today because I've got a lot to cover around everything PFAS, and I want to go really deep into this whole topic with you and use this opportunity really as a masterclass to explain to you everything around PFAS. So if you're a manufacturer, a supply chain leader, a compliance professional, I think today's episode is going to be one that you really don't want to miss. We're going to dive deep into PFAS regulation, a topic that is really reshaping how companies think about product compliance, about supply chain transparency, and market access. We're going to cover a bunch of different topics. We're going to cover what PFAS are and why they matter. We're going to cover the massive regulatory changes coming in 2025 and 2026. The critical federal and state level deadlines that we should all be aware of, the hidden risks in your supply chain, practical strategies that companies are using today to stay ahead, and finally a glimpse on platforms, software, the role of AI, how platforms like Certivo are helping companies transform compliance from being this bottleneck into a competitive advantage. So whether you're just learning about PFAS, you already need deep into compliance challenges, I promise you, today you're going to walk away a much better prepared. So let's jump right in. So let's start with the basics, the fundamentals of what PFAS are, like a PFAS 101 of sorts. What are PFAS, right? PFAS are nothing but short for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. And they're a massive family of human-made chemicals. More than 10,000 different PFAS compounds exist. They're incredibly versatile, resistant to water, oil, heat, and chemical reactions. And that's why PFAS have been used since the 1940s in products ranging from non-stick cookware, water-resistant jackets, stain-proof carpets, medical devices, semiconductors, firefighting foams, packaging for fast food, and even that microwave popcorn that we use all the time. So what's the downside? Okay, great. This sounds great, right? So what's the downside? Well, PFAS, they just don't break down naturally. And they're called forever chemicals for a reason. Once they're released, they tend to stay in the soil, in our water, in wildlife, and in us. In fact, today, I think the last metric was that PFAS has been detected in the bloodstreams of 97% Americans. And exposure is linked to serious health effects, cancer, liver damage, thyroid disease, immune system problems, developmental delays, and more. So the persistence and toxicity have made PFAS a global priority for regulators. So that's the basics of, why do we even care about PFAS as a whole? So I think the next question is then, how does this PFAS sneak into your supply chain as a whole? And if you're manufacturing products, even if you don't intentionally use PFAS, you're probably a manufacturer saying, well, I don't really use PFAS in my supply chain. How can they really sneak into your supply chain? Well, they can. Well, number one is, direct use, because if you may not be using PFAS, some of your suppliers might use PFAS treated materials, coatings, adhesives, lubricants, and they may not label them very clearly. The other way to get into your supply chain is through just indirect contamination. You can imagine if you're using some sort of recycled plastics, recycled textiles, some packaging materials, they might just carry some PFAS residues as well. The third is just process chemicals. Sometimes PFAS are introduced during production as a mold releases agents or processing aids. So what's the scary part? The scary part of all of this is that you could be selling products knowingly or unknowingly containing PFAS without even knowing it. I think that's the scary part. And under upcoming regulations, ignorance is not going to be an excuse. You will still be responsible and held accountable for compliance. So this is very important that all of us supply chain leaders take into account this whole aspect of PFAS very, very seriously. We're going to be held accountable, and we can't just raise our hands up in the air and say, well, I didn't know, or my supplier had it. We are accountable. We are responsible. So let's talk a little more about the regulatory landscape, both globally and here in the US where I'm located. Historically, PFAS regulation was fragmented in the early 2000s. The US EPA worked with companies on a voluntary phase out of PFOAs and PFOS. Some specific bans targeted firefighting foams. So that was how it started in the early 2000s. Today, things are different. We're seeing a full chemical class bans proposed. And so here's what's happening. In the European Union, very specifically, regulators under the REACH propose to restrict over 10,000 PFAS substances, the largest single chemical ban in EU history. In Canada, the new CEPA or CEPA reporting rules will force manufacturers to declare PFAS content as early as January 2025. It's already started. We're now in April 2025. In Australia, PFAS import and usage restrictions are now being enforced. And in the United States, the EPA finalized its TSCA PFAS reporting rule in November 2023. So deadlines have already been started. There are more deadlines coming in 2025 and 2026. In fact, let's talk a little bit about the key TSCA deadlines or TSCA deadlines here in the US. As part of the TSCA details, companies are required to report PFAS used from 2011 to 2022. And it not just applies to raw chemicals, but to finished articles like parts, components, textiles, devices. There's no minimum quantity thresholds, and it covers importers as well as domestic manufacturers. In short, if you build or sell physical products, this touches you. So let's talk a little bit about the PFAS deadlines a little more and get a little more specific about these deadlines. Deadlines matter, and some of them are coming very, very fast. So this is something that you need to keep track of. If you have a spreadsheet or a pen and paper or something, you're taking some notes, I think you should write this down. If not, don't worry. I'll send you a transcript of this entire podcast episode at the end of it. You can find it, wherever you're listening to one of these. But the important EPA, TSCA, TSCA deadlines are as follows. So November 13, 2023, TSCA PFAS reporting rule was effective. Okay, it's already in the past. July 11th, 2025, EPA opens its reporting portal. Jan 11th, 2026, reporting deadline for most manufacturers. And July 11th, 2026 is the extended deadline for small manufacturers. Okay, so those are the deadlines. So what's coming right now in 2025 is July 11th, EPA portal opens. Jan 11, 26, reporting deadline. And then July 26th, extended deadline for small manufacturers. In the case of Canada, they have their organization is called CEPA or CEPA. Their PFAS reporting is already gone. It's January 29th, 2025. So they're already late. That's not good. You might have to file for an extension. Major state actions within the US. In California, Jan 1st, 2025, there's a ban on textiles with greater than 100 ppm PFAS. In Minnesota, Jan 2025, ban on intentionally added PFAS in consumer products. In Colorado, indoor textile furnishings PFAS ban effective Jan 1, 2025. And in Maine, total PFAS ban for most products by 2032, unless currently unavoidable. And then finally, in the EU, you have the final PFAS REACH restriction decision that's expected sometime in 2025. The bottom line is that 2025 and 2026 are not someday. They are right now from a business planning perspective. So I know that was a lot. There were a bunch of deadlines that I listed out there, but again, you should look at the corresponding websites, the EPA, the CEPA, etc., the different state websites. Or if not, there's also going to be a PDF attached with this podcast that you can get access to as well. Or you can just contact us at some point in time and we can give that to you as well. So let's talk now about why PFAS non-compliance is a business risk. Let's talk about the business consequences. Some of the risks of PFAS non-compliance include, number one, market access loss. Your products could be banned from certain key states like California or the EU if you can't prove PFAS compliance. Number two, contract violations. Many OEMs, distributors, large customers are demanding PFAS-free declarations. Failure to provide them could violate your supplier agreements. Number three, heavy fines. Environmental fines for PFAS violations can reach, $500,000 per case in Europe, or even more for repeated offenses. Number four, brand and ESG damage. PFAS misalignment is now considered an ESG red flag. Investors, customers, partners increasingly view PFAS compliance as a signal of responsible corporate governance. Number 5, product recalls. If PFAS containing products must be recalled, the costs and reputational risk can be, enormous to you. In short, PFAS compliance isn't just some sort of legal requirement. It's becoming a core part of your competitive positioning. Your business could get shut off if you don't take control of PFAS reporting within your supply chain. And why, is supply chain visibility so hard? I think that's a good question that we also need to ask. Managing PFAS compliance is not just about my own factories, right? It's about the entire supply chain. I just mentioned to you, it could be some part that you're buying from a supplier out there that could have some PFAS. Even they might not know that they have some PFAS in their product. So this is not a manufacturer. This is not a factory issue. This is about your supply chain, your entire supply base. And that's where the big challenge lies. Many suppliers are unaware that PFAS regulations even apply to them. Bill of materials will often lack full material disclosures. You don't get that from your suppliers sometimes. They're not going to give you full material disclosures, full material declarations. It's hard to get that from them. Supplier certifications can be, outdated, incomplete. They could be missing altogether. Language barriers, international differences also add complexities. Almost all of us are dealing with suppliers that are overseas and speak different languages. And companies trying to manage all this manually using spreadsheets, emails, are essentially falling behind fast. So we are luckily in a world today that automation and real-time supply chain visibility, supply chain collaboration are no longer sort of nice to have anymore. They're like survival tools. And with the advent of AI in the last, few years, this opportunity that seemed to be just some sort of pipe dream in the past is now a reality. So what are some of the best companies out there today using to prepare for all these new deadlines and take control of PFAS in their supply chain? What are the smart companies doing? Well, number one, what I'm seeing with the early leaders, number one, they're doing a full inventory mapping. They're mapping every product, every part, every supplier for PFAS risk today. They're not waiting for, 2025, mid of 2025 until these deadlines come. They're saying, like, we got to start right now. We got to get control of our supply chain. We got to get all our suppliers. We got to understand their products. We got to understand the parts. We got to understand from them, what are their processes that are used? We have to get declarations, etc. from them. They're engaging their supplier base early. They're launching structured outreach programs. They're educating suppliers about PFAS. They're tracking who responds, etc. Number 3, material substitution planning. They're starting to find early alternatives for PFAS heavy materials. Because look, reformulations take time. So the earlier you can start, the better it is for all of us. Number 4, automated compliance monitoring. They're investing in platforms that monitor global regulatory updates in real time, not just relying on outdated static databases. This whole process is so real time. Centralized certificate management. They're digitizing supplier declarations, certificates of compliance, audit trails, not just stuffing emails into folders. Companies that move proactively are finding that they can even turn compliance into a market advantage, securing new business where competitors are caught unprepared. And now, a little shameless plug from my end, but that's how Certivo helps. Certivo is my company. At Certivo, we have built a platform specifically to solve these challenges. We help companies upload their bill of materials or connect to their ERP and PLM systems and bring all that data into a centralized platform, automatically scans for PFAS risks, sends automated multi-language outreach to suppliers requesting updated PFAS compliance declarations, tracks supplier response rate, escalates non-responsive suppliers, generates certificates for compliance for your products within the platform, as well as helps your supplier do the same, monitor PFAS regulations globally in real time, keeping track of deadlines. And all this is done with an AI-powered compliance assistant called Cora that essentially helps manufacturers get control of their entire supply chain PFAS risk. And you combine that with, your own compliance manager that Certivo will provide you for personal support. And so the result, the companies on Certivo are staying ahead of evolving PFAS rules. They're protecting their market access. They're eliminating manual compliance bottlenecks. And if you're interested in seeing how Certivo works, please visit us at certivo.com and, we'd love to help. So thank you again for spending time with me today. I know this topic isn't easy. There's a lot as part of it, but by learning about how PFAS really could affect your supply chain. By learning about it now, by taking proactive steps, you're setting up your company for success in 2025 and beyond. If you found this helpful, please consider sharing this episode with a colleague or teammate who needs to hear it. Stay compliant, stay proactive, and as always, stay competitive. I'll talk to you next time. Thank you.